Most people think strength comes from winning, from being on top. But here's the truth: strength is forged in the moments when everything is falling apart, when the business collapses, when the relationships break, when the dream you worked for dies in front of your eyes. That's when most people give up. That's when most people run. But you're not here for most people. You're here to learn how to stay strong when the world feels like it's against you. And in this lesson, we turn to one of the darkest chapters of Steve Jobs' life and how he transformed despair into the very power that built Apple into what it is today. Narrator T. In Jobs' reflective tunning. At 30 years old, Steve Jobs was fired from the very company he created. Imagine that for a moment. Everything he built was stripped away from him. His life's work is gone, his vision stolen. To many, that moment would be the end. But here's the paradox: when everything falls apart, clarity emerges. Jobs once said, "Getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me." Because in chaos, you are forced to confront yourself. No titles, no company, no applause. Just the truth of who you are and what you really believe in. That's where strength begins, in the silence of loss. Narrator: pain is energy. Most people waste it. They turn it into bitterness, blame, or regret. Jobs did the opposite. He took the humiliation, the anger, the loneliness, and he turned it into fire. During those years away from Apple, he built NXT. He nurtured Pixar. He redefined what was possible in technology and storytelling. His pain became a laboratory for innovation. Strength doesn't mean avoiding pain. It means converting it into momentum. You don't run from the fire. You let it forge you. Narrator: do you know why most people collapse when life collapses? Because they listen to the noise. The opinions, the criticism, the whispers that say, "You failed. You're finished. You can't come back." But Jobs didn't listen. He had always trusted something deeper. His inner voice, his intuition, and in your darkest moments you must do the same. Detach from the noise, ignore the judgment. Remember, strength is not loud. Strength is silent. It is the decision to keep going, even when nobody believes you can. Narrator: when Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, he wasn't the same man who had left. He was stronger, sharper, hungrier. The pain had stripped away the ego, the noise, the distractions. And from the ruins, he built the Apple that changed the world: iMac, iPod, iPhone. The very devices you hold in your hands today were born from a man who once lost everything. Strength is not about never falling. It's about building again, not despite the ruins, but because of them. Sometimes, life has to break you before it can reveal the truth. We think we're in control, that the plans we've carefully drawn will unfold exactly as we want. But the universe, it doesn't work that way. Chaos arrives uninvited. It tears down the walls we built, it rips apart the identities we cling to, and it shatters the stories we've told ourselves. That's exactly what happened to Steve Jobs. Imagine this: you are 30 years old, and the company you started in your parents' garage is worth billions. Your name is on the cover of magazines. The world calls you a visionary, a genius, a revolutionary. You walk into the Apple offices believing that you are untouchable, the heart and soul of the company. And then one board meeting later, it's gone. They strip it away from you. The very company you built throws you out, fired, exiled, powerless. Jobs described it himself: what had been the focus of my entire adult life was gone. And it was devastating. Now, think about that moment. Most people would collapse. They'd disappear. They'd bury themselves in regret or anger or shame. And for a while, Jobs did feel that pain. He admitted he was publicly humiliated. He felt like running away from Silicon Valley. But here's where the story turns. Because out of that collapse, something extraordinary happened. In losing everything, Jobs discovered something more valuable than success. He found clarity. You see, chaos has a strange way of stripping away illusions. When everything is falling apart, the noise fades, the applause disappears, the titles mean nothing, and what you're left with is yourself, your raw, unfiltered self. Jobs realized that being fired didn't erase his love for technology. It didn't erase his passion for design, for simplicity, for creating tools that empower people. In fact, when Apple was gone, those passions became clearer than ever before. Because when you lose the things that once defined you, what remains is who you really are. That is the hidden gift of chaos. It removes the masks. It takes away the distractions. It forces you to ask what truly matters. What do I believe in? What will I fight for, even when the world says I'm finished? For Jobs, that clarity was life-changing. In the emptiness of being fired, he realized that he still loved what he did. He still loved the craft. He still loved the process of building something from nothing. And that love, that clarity, became the foundation for everything that came after. Think about your own life. When everything is going well, it's easy to be distracted. Easy to chase what others expect from you. Easy to wear masks that please society, family, or friends. But when chaos strikes, when you lose the job, the relationship, the dream, suddenly, you can no longer hide behind those illusions. You are forced to face yourself. Clarity is not found in comfort. It is born in collapse. It is born in those moments when the future you imagined is ripped away, and you are left staring at the unknown, and in that unknown, you find what's real. Jobs said later in life, getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Why? Because it freed him. It gave him the space to think, to create without the weight of expectation. It gave him the clarity to rediscover why he started in the first place. This is the paradox of chaos. On the surface, it feels like destruction, but underneath, it is a reset. It wipes the slate clean. It strips away the non-essential. And it whispers, "This is who you really are." When Jobs walked out of Apple, he had no roadmap, no certainty, no safety net. But what he did have was clarity. He knew he was a creator. He knew he was a builder. He knew his passion wasn't tied to a company logo, or a board of directors, or Wall Street's approval. His passion was deeper. And because of that, he could start again. So when life falls apart, don't run from the chaos. Don't drown in despair. Step into it. Let it strip away the illusions. Let it burn down what no longer serves you. Because on the other side, there is clarity, and clarity is power. Most people run from pain. They numb it, they bury it, they hide from it. But Steve Jobs understood something different. Pain can destroy you, or it can power you. It can become the very fuel that takes you beyond limits you never thought possible. When Jobs was forced out of Apple, he wasn't just dealing with business failure. He was dealing with personal humiliation. Imagine being called a genius one day and a failure the next. Imagine the headlines. The whispers in Silicon Valley, the investors, the employees, the friends who turned their backs. He was crushed. He admitted he spent months questioning himself. He thought about leaving the industry entirely. But instead of running from that pain, Jobs sat with it. He let it burn. And in that fire, he found something most people never do. He discovered that pain is energy. It is raw, unfiltered energy. And the only question is, will you let it consume you, or will you channel it? Jobs chose to channel it. Out of that pain, he built NXT, a company that focused on high-end computers for education and business. Most people at the time dismissed it, but NXT became the foundation for Apple's rebirth years later. At the same time, he poured himself into Pixar, transforming a struggling animation studio into a revolutionary force. Pixar would go on to create Toy Story and forever change the history of film. All of this happened because Jobs refused to let pain cripple him. He turned it into fuel. He let the sting of betrayal sharpen his focus. He let the loneliness of exile drive his hunger. He turned the humiliation of failure into the fire that lit his second act. That's the lesson. Pain doesn't mean the end. Pain is not a wall. It's a doorway. But only if you're willing to walk through it. You see, most people make a critical mistake. They treat pain as a signal to stop. They interpret failure as proof that they are not enough. But Jobs knew better. He saw pain as a test, a teacher, a brutal, unforgiving teacher, but a teacher nonetheless. Think about it. What do you really remember in life? Do you remember the easy days, the comfortable days, the days when everything went according to plan? No. You remember the struggles, the heartbreaks, the failures, because those are the moments that shape you. Those are the moments that define your strength. Jobs once said, "Sometimes life hits you in the head with a brick. Don't lose faith." That's what pain feels like. A brick to the head. But in that moment, you have a choice. You can sit in the rubble and give up, or you can use that brick to build something new. And Jobs built. Every setback became a stepping stone. Every rejection became a reason to sharpen his vision. The pain didn't go away, but it transformed. It became momentum. That's how real strength is forged. Not by avoiding suffering, but by converting it. By deciding, this pain will not bury me. This pain will build me. Look at your own life. Maybe you've been rejected. Maybe you've lost someone. Maybe your dreams collapsed right in front of you. The question is not whether you will feel pain. You will. The question is, what will you do with it? Will you drown in it? Or will you turn it into fuel like Jobs did? Because here's the secret. Pain carries energy. It's heavy, it's raw, it's overwhelming. And that means it can move you, if you decide to direct it. Pain can be the force that drives you to reinvent yourself, to build again, to rise stronger. Jobs' exile from Apple was not the end of his story. It was the fire that lit the next chapter. Pixar, NXT, and eventually his return to Apple. They were all born out of pain. Without that suffering, there would be no rebirth. Without that fire, there would be no iMac, no iPod, no iPhone. Pain became his power source. And it can become yours too. Not when you resist it, not when you hide from it, but when you face it, embrace it, and convert it into the energy to move forward. There is a reason most people break when life breaks them. It's not always the failure itself. It's not always the loss or the rejection. What really crushes them is the noise. The voices from the outside, the judgment, the criticism, the whispers that say, "You're done. You're finished. You'll never come back from this." When Steve Jobs was exiled from Apple, the noise was deafening. The press called him washed up. Investors said he was reckless. Competitors mocked him. Even people he once called friends began to distance themselves. It would have been easy to believe them. Easy to let those voices become his truth. But Jobs had always carried something most people never mastered: the ability to silence the noise. You see, real strength isn't loud. It doesn't come from proving yourself to everyone. It doesn't come from applause, or validation, or being celebrated. True strength is quiet. It's the decision to keep going even when no one is cheering, even when no one believes. Jobs learned this lesson early in life. As a college dropout sleeping on floors, as a kid tinkering with machines when nobody cared, he already knew the importance of tuning out the outside world. And during his darkest years, that discipline saved him. While the world told him he was finished, he trusted the only voice that mattered: his own. He once said, "Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice." That wasn't just a quote for him. It was survival. Because in exile, he realized something most of us forget: the world will always have opinions. The world will always tell you what you can't do, who you can't be, and why you're not good enough. If you listen too closely, You'll spend your life trying to please everyone else and lose yourself in the process. But if you detach from the noise, if you find the courage to ignore the critics, you unlock something extraordinary. You unlock the ability to create without fear, to build not for applause, but for purpose. When Jobs was building Next and Pixar, the world wasn't paying attention. The headlines weren't praising him. The critics weren't applauding. But in that silence away from the spotlight, he did some of his most important work. He redefined his craft. He rediscovered his vision. And he prepared for a return that would change everything. That's what detachment does. It gives you space. Space to breathe. Space to think. Space to create without being suffocated by opinions. Ask yourself how much of your life is controlled by noise. How often do you hold back because you're afraid of what people might say? How many dreams have you abandoned because someone told you it wasn't possible? That's the prison of noise. It chains you to fear. But Jobs shows us another way. He shows us that greatness isn't built in the spotlight. It's built in the quiet. It's built when you detach from the noise and commit to your vision, even when the world doesn't understand. It's not easy. The human mind craves approval. We want to be seen, to be validated, to be applauded. But here's the truth. The people who change the world are almost always ridiculed at first. Their ideas are mocked. Their choices are questioned. Their vision is misunderstood. Jobs faced all of it. But he didn't break because he never confused outside noise with inner truth. When he returned to Apple in 1997, the noise was still there. People doubted him. They said Apple was too far gone, that it couldn't be saved. But Jobs wasn't listening. He trusted his intuition. He cut through the chaos, simplified the vision, and focused on creating products that mattered. And within a few short years, the same critics who mocked him were calling him a genius again. This is the paradox. If you live by their praise, you will die by their criticism. But if you detach from both, from the applause and from the doubt, you become unstoppable, because then your actions are no longer driven by noise. They are driven by purpose. That's the lesson. Detach from the noise. Ignore the opinions. Trust the voice inside you. Because in the end, it's not the critics who have to live with your decisions. It's you. When Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, the company was weeks away from bankruptcy. The empire he once founded had become a shadow of itself. The brand was weak, the products uninspired, the culture broken. To most of the world, Apple was finished. Nothing but ruins. But Jobs had lived in ruins before. He had been stripped of his title, exiled from the company, humiliated in the public eye. And in those years away, he learned something powerful. Destruction is not the end. Ruins are not death. Ruins are raw material. They are the foundation upon which you can build again. That's exactly what he did. Jobs didn't see Apple as a graveyard. He saw it as a canvas. He looked at the mess, the failure, the despair, and he saw possibility. Where others saw ashes, he saw fire waiting to be reignited. And so he began rebuilding, not by clinging to the past, but by stripping it away. He cut down product lines that no longer mattered. He eliminated the noise and focused on simplicity. He took what was broken and reshaped it into something alive. That process was not glamorous. It was ruthless. It was painful. It was exhausting, but it was necessary. This is what most people miss. When everything collapses, they want to rebuild instantly. They want comfort to return quickly. But rebuilding from the ruins is not about rushing. It's about rethinking. It's about asking, if I had to start again from nothing, what would I create? What truly matters now? Jobs understood this. He didn't try to bring back the old Apple. He built a new one. A leaner, sharper, hungrier Apple. He focused the company around a single mission, creating insanely great products that change people's lives. And from those ruins came the iMac, the iPod, the iPhone. Innovations that didn't just save Apple, they transformed the world. Think about that for a moment. The very devices that shape your daily life were born out of ruins. They were born from a man who once lost everything. They were born from a company that stood on the edge of extinction. That's the power of rebuilding. But here's the deeper lesson. It's not just about business. It's about life. You will face ruins too. Maybe not on the scale of Apple, but in your own way. The relationship that collapses, the career that crumbles, the dream that falls apart. In those moments, you will feel like it's the end. You will look at the ruins and think there is nothing left. But there is always something left. There is always raw material. There is always a chance to build again. The ruins are not your enemy. They are your beginning. They strip away what no longer works. They clear the ground so you can build something stronger. Jobs didn't resist the ruins. He embraced them. He used them as fuel. He built not despite them, but because of them. And rebuilding requires courage. It means letting go of pride. It means accepting that what once worked no longer does. It means daring to imagine something new, even when the world tells you it's impossible. That's what Jobs did when he walked back into Apple's broken halls. He didn't see impossibility. He saw a challenge worthy of his vision. That's how resilience is born, not by pretending the ruins don't exist, but by using them. By deciding, this is not the end of my story. This is the beginning of a new one. When you build from ruins, you are not weaker. You are stronger. Because you carry the lessons of failure. You carry the clarity of loss. You carry the fire of pain. And those forces make you unshakable. They strip away illusions and leave behind only what is essential. Look at Steve Jobs. His greatest creations, his greatest triumphs, his greatest legacy, none of them came before the fall. They all came after. They came from rebuilding. They came from refusing to accept that ruins meant the end. So when your world falls apart, when your dreams collapse into dust, remember this: you are standing not in the end, but in the beginning. You are standing in ruins, yes, but ruins are fertile ground. They are proof that something new can rise. And if you choose to build again, if you choose to see possibility where others see failure, then the ruins will not define you. You will define them. When everything falls apart, most people see only endings. But Steve Jobs showed us that in endings, there are beginnings. In chaos, there is clarity. In pain, there is power. In noise, there is silence. And in ruins, there is rebirth. He didn't avoid the darkness. He walked through it. He didn't deny the pain. He used it. He didn't drown in the opinions of others. He trusted his own voice. And when everything was destroyed, he built again. Not the same, but stronger, sharper, greater. That's the true lesson of his journey. Strength is not about never falling. It's about who you become when you rise again. It's about turning the chaos into clarity, the pain into fuel, the noise into silence, and the ruins into creation. Your life will break at times. You will be tested. You will face losses that cut deep. But when that moment comes, remember Steve Jobs' darkest power lessons. Remember that within chaos lies clarity. Within pain lies energy. Within noise lies the voice that truly matters. And within ruins lies the foundation of your future. The question is not whether you will fall. You will. The question is, when everything is falling apart, will you have the courage to stay strong, to build again, and to rise? Steve Jobs stands alone in a vast, crumbling hall that resembles both a corporate boardroom and a medieval cathedral. The long table is shattered, chairs overturned, paper scattered like fallen leaves. Behind him, colossal stained glass windows depict broken Apple logos fractured into shards of light. Jobs is dressed in his classic black turtleneck, but it hangs loosely on him, symbolizing his exile and vulnerability. His face is illuminated by a single beam of divine light, cutting through the chaos, casting long, dramatic shadows that blend Renaissance chiaroscuro with abstract brush strokes of red and gray to symbolize humiliation and loss. Around him, ghostly figures of board members fade into the darkness, faceless and cold, as if swallowed by history. Yet, despite the destruction, Jobs' eyes are steady, almost serene, reflecting the first spark of clarity being born within the collapse. In this painting, Jobs is depicted as a blacksmith in a Renaissance forge, hammering molten steel that glows like fire. But instead of forging swords or armor, he is shaping abstract symbols of NXT and Pixar, glowing geometric forms rising from the anvil. The background is stormy, with dark clouds swirling like abstract expressionist brushstrokes, filled with crimson, and deep blues symbolizing rage and despair. His posture is tense but powerful, sweat glistening on his brow, as sparks fly around him like constellations. Above his head, faint silhouettes of Toy Story characters float, like holy apparitions in the smoke, hinting at the creation of Pixar. His hands grip the hammer with both struggle and determination, the glowing metal embodying pain itself, being reshaped into something new. This piece fuses the drama of medieval altar paintings with the chaotic intensity of modernist abstraction, showing Jobs turning his suffering into energy. This piece portrays Steve Jobs in the center of a Renaissance style town square filled with faceless crowds, their mouths open wide as if shouting, painted in grotesque medieval caricature. Their words are painted as black ribbons twisting through the air, wrapping around him like serpents. Jobs stands barefoot, his black turtleneck stark against the chaos, with one hand raised to his ear in rejection of the noise, while his other hand rests over his heart. A golden halo-like aura surrounds his head, not religious but symbolic of inner truth and intuition. The background architecture collapses into surreal, abstract forms, representing the distortion of public opinion. Yet Jobs' face is calm, his eyes fixed inward, glowing with quiet confidence. The contrast between the screaming mob, painted in violent strokes, and Jobs' stillness rendered in soft, controlled Renaissance light shows the spiritual power of detaching from judgment. In this painting, Jobs stands amidst the ruins of a shattered temple made of stone apple logos broken into pieces on the ground. Around him, crumbled pillars lean like fallen empires, while the sky burns with orange light, resembling both a sunrise and a fire. He kneels at the center, picking up fragments of the broken apple and reshaping them into a glowing orb, representing the rebirth of innovation. His expression is one of determination, lips pressed tightly, but eyes burning with vision. Ghostly outlines of the iMac and iPod rise like apparitions behind him, painted as if they are emerging from the dust. The scene combines the majesty of Renaissance resurrection paintings with the symbolic power of abstract art, blending ruin and creation into a single frame. Jobs is both the architect and the builder, standing alone but carrying the strength of someone rebuilding the future from ashes. The final painting is monumental, like a Renaissance altarpiece. Jobs stands tall at the center, wearing his black turtleneck as if it were royal armor. In one hand, he holds a glowing iPhone raised toward the heavens like a torch, illuminating the faces of a diverse crowd below him, who reach out in awe. The background is painted in luminous golds and deep blues, evoking Byzantine icons but layered with bold abstract strokes of white and silver to symbolize modern innovation. Behind Jobs, the ruins of the past still lie scattered, but they are overshadowed by towering new structures of glass and steel, a vision of Apple's rebirth. His face is solemn, not arrogant, his gaze fixed on the horizon, as if aware that pain and loss will always return, but so will strength and creation. The entire painting radiates both triumph and humility, a visual hymn to the power of rebuilding after devastation.